Hello friends and welcome back to the channel where today we are going to walk you through the entirety of the Alliance War Showcase, and we're going to start here with the right hand path, which I think is significantly easier, and if you're just looking for completion you should probably start here. So first off we have this Venom on node 3, it's a shared fight here. He has a node called Electric Defense, so you need to have a Power Burn immune champ, because if he gets an Armor Up buff then you're going to get Power Burn every time you hit into him. Additionally, with the Spaced Armor node, every time you hit into him you're going to be triggering a passive special lock on yourself, and that's something that Hulkling here is not immune to. So my strategy here is to build up to 2 bars of power, and then you want to wait until the special lock falls off naturally. Then you want to hit into Venom's block 4 times with your basic attacks, and you want to let your special 2 trigger the unblockable, because if you trigger the unblockable and you break his block with your basic attack, you are going to re-trigger that special lock and be unable to use your special 2. So you want to let that special 2 kind of do the work for you. And R5 Hulkling, so good, finishes that fight in just a couple specials. Alright, next up we have this Kindred on Hazard Shift, and you're going to see me use Titania here and for a lot of these fights in this quest. Titania, in my opinion, is the absolute most busted tactic attacker, and you can use her for almost all of these tactic defender fights, including Kindred. Kindred was a brand new defender when this tactic was live, and the attacker tactic is so busted, it really turned him into basically like a nothing fight. So you notice here we're taking no damage from the Hazard Shift debuffs. That is a benefit of the attacker tactic. I think for each debuff you have on the opponent, you gain resistance to damage over time effects, so that includes the bleed, the shocks from this node. It also includes the passive degen from Kindred, and that's what why this tactic makes him like such a joke. So you can see we have triggered the outbreak, we have degens on us, but we're taking no damage, and in fact we're actively healing from those bleed and shock debuffs. So I saved a special for the root there. Unfortunately, I allowed him to hit me in the face a couple times, and the special 3 is going to end this fight. Titania, the most busted tactic attacker. Hulk, Void, also really good options for these fights. Moving on, we have a future Ant-Man. This guy was always placed in Section 2 on Path 3. Has a node called Sloped Armor, so you're going to glance a lot if you hit into him with the armor up, in addition to his normal glancing chance. And then if you hit into him while he has an armor up effect, you're going to be bleeding as well. So with Hulkling here, probably the best overall future Ant-Man counter in the game. All you have to do is wait out that initial armor up and then hit into his block to trigger a Pierce effect. And as long as you have a Pierce effect on you, future Ant-Man can no longer gain his armor ups, and you can safely pretty much do whatever you want. If you don't have a Hulkling ranked up, there are a couple of other really good options for this fight. Magneto was a popular option that we sent once or twice to this fight. Terrax is also a decent option if you have a Terrax. King Groot will be a slower option because you won't be able to stop the his armor up buffs from triggering, but he's bleed immune, so you won't take any of that damage back. But yeah, if you have a Hulkling, he's pretty much the best overall option for this fight. And this special 2, I believe, finishes the job. Alright, moving on. The next fight is an interesting one because Red Skull was a tactic defender during these 2 seasons. However, his buff did not go live until well after the seasons were over. So this is kind of like a what-if type scenario. This is the only time I'm using Kate in this quest. Kate is a tactic attacker, but she has really no access to natural debuffs. So she relies entirely on basic attacks for the tactic here. As you can see, we're placing a bunch of withers on Red Skull just by hitting into him. This is kind of a bit of a sloppy fight here. I was trying to work out the spacing on heavy countering his special 1. So you're going to see me take like a bunch of them like right to the face or straight up miss. As well, or right there I hit into his auto block. So just kind of getting a feel for this fight as I'm doing it live. I didn't really practice this at all. But, Kate is doing Kate things. The Cold Snap is very powerful. Even with only 1 dialed in, it's still ticking for over 5,000 damage per second. And as soon as we get the second one here, I think in total they're ticking for something like, almost like 10,000 here, 7,000, something like that. So we managed to refresh both of them. Right here, I hit into his block once, and he resists it. That sucks. And then I take a special 1 to the face, so all of a sudden the fight is looking pretty sketchy, but we manage to get through it. Alright, this next fight is really a long one. It's a slog. I'm going in here with Titania. And the idea here is that you need to be knocking down Sasquatch quite frequently because of the ebb and flow knockdown node. He has protection. The problem is that whenever you knock him down, he goes debuff immune for several seconds. So since he is a tactic defender and the tactic attackers mostly rely on debuffs, it's going to be difficult to really get in your damage here. So in the war seasons that we actually had this tactic live, we would send a Quicksilver to this fight. DLL had a Ascended Quicksilver. He would kind of send himself to this fight quite a bit. I've never taken this fight until now. So my strategy here was basically just to never knock him down. You do take like the damage penalty because of protection. So you can consider his health pool to be like 60% larger. But even with that damage penalty, Titania is just so strong. Eventually here, I think I get a little bit impatient and I go ahead and launch my Special 3 just to try and get some additional damage. But once you hit his regen phase, it is really important not to knock him down because you need to rely on the debuffs and the Despair Mastery in order to counteract his healing. This is one of those fights, I think, that is not totally representative of what War was like during these two seasons because there were a few rank 3 Sasquatches floating around in Tier 1. However, none of them were even remotely close to SIG 200 like this one is. We had some SIG 20s, some SIG 40s. I don't recall ever seeing like a SIG 60. So the chance that you trigger a regen is something like 70%, I think, on a SIG 200 Sasquatch. So this fight has a ton more regen than you would normally have in a war setting, at least for the time being. So right here we have triggered the regen phase of him. So you notice that we are not totally stopping his healing. That's because these defenders have mastery setups. They're running max recovery. So even with despair, some of that healing is sneaking through here. And it does look like we're not doing very much damage. We're not really out damaging the healing here, but give it a few seconds. We'll make some decent progress here. And I think at some point I decide to just wait out the rest of this Wrath here and then try and YOLO it with another Special 3 here. So we're going to push him, I think, back to the Special 2 here one more time. And then as soon as he launches this Special 2, we go ahead and knock him down with a heavy to remove protection, fire off the Special 3, and this Special 3 ends up killing him. Alright, moving on, we have a Werewolf, also on a Hazard Shift fight, and again, you can use pretty much any tactic attacker in this fight. Titania works great, Hulk works great, Void takes this fight just fine. You have the added difficulty of Conflictor in this fight, so your debuffs, especially from those tactic champions, are going to be triggering power gain. So if you have, if you stay aggressive, the withers that you're placing from the attacker tactic are really going to negate that power gain. So this becomes kind of like a nothing fight with any sort of tactic champ. And again, Titania, Hulk, Luke Cage was tactic back in the day, but his buff didn't go live. So if you have a ranked up Luke Cage, he'll do well here. Void will also do very well here. One thing you want to be aware of here is that if you aren't using a straight buff immune champ like Titania or like Cassie Lang, you really want to make sure that you are knocking down Werewolf quite frequently. And knocking down a tactic defender with a tactic attacker is going to place a slow debuff on him. As you can see, there's one on him now. So he will go unstoppable when he triggers those howls, and the slow debuff will counteract that. In addition, whenever you gain a buff, there's a chance for tactic defenders to go unstoppable as well. So you kind of avoid all of that nastiness with somebody like Titania or like Cassie or like regular Ant-Man. But yeah, this fight is pretty much a nothing fight. This is the last Titania fight that I use her for on this path, so we really just need to get through it, and I think this special ends up finishing the job. Alright, next up we have a fight that I am very familiar with. We have a Mysterio on what is Node 49 with Stunning Reflection, Polka Dot Power, and Brute Force. I took this fight many times in Seasons 44 and 45, always with Void. And it was a challenging fight for sure, mostly because you are kind of at the mercy of his AI. If he turtles up, or if he's just spamming heavies, you can lose a lot of your health or even die to the degen. So you really have to maintain a certain level of aggression in this fight. Most important thing in this fight with using Void, or any other tactic attacker for that matter, is you want to make sure that you are heavy countering Mysterio's Special 1. That's going to apply a slow debuff, and the slow debuff in this fight really serves two purposes. First of all, it prevents him from going unstoppable. If you remember, with the defense tactic, whenever you trigger a buff on yourself, including the precision buff from dexterity, the defender has a chance to go unstoppable, and the slow debuff is going to prevent that. Secondly, it is a unique debuff, so it adds to Void's overall direct damage output, so you want to make sure that you keep those extra unique debuffs active as long as possible. So you've got the slow there, we've got the withers, that's also counting towards extra damage here. Another thing you're noticing is that I am freely hitting into Mysterio after his special 1 when he has that damage reflection passive up. And again, we can safely do that because of the attacker tactic. When the damage reflection ends and we are supposed to take damage, we are actually resistant to that damage completely, and instead of healing up, we're actually going to reverse Mysterio's regeneration, and he's actually going to take like double damage. So you'll see him, when he triggers that regen, he's taking like a little bit of burst of damage there. So again, keep heavy countering, and you'll get through that fight. Alright, moving on to Photon. You can see we've swapped in Black Cat. I used Black Cat for Photon on both of my runs through this quest. I never once took a Photon boss during these actual war seasons, so this fight right here is literally my first ever time taking Photon, a Photon of this size with Black Cat. So the general idea here is you want to heavy counter her heavy twice, and that's going to build up your combo to above 15. And against Science Champs, 15 hits in your combo is going to give you the maximum 60% ability accuracy reduction, and then you can add a flat 40% with the sabotage debuff from your special 2. So the general idea here is that you really want to turn off Photon's ability to generate those charges, and thus prevent her from being able to access her pure light form, because she will be below 10. You can knock her down freely and go from there. So I think in this first fight, I do kind of sort of accidentally, or just take the risk of triggering her pure light form. I am very intentionally baiting out her special 1 here, blocking the first hit right here, dexing back, and then parrying when she dives in. So now we've kind of reset ourselves. Pure light form is over, and we can keep that sabotage debuff active every time we fail one of her abilities. So you can see we would normally be getting debuffs on ourselves, but hitting into her, that ability is failing. You can see just how much red damage is triggering on every hit. It kind of makes up for the fact that Photon is bleed immune. So the sabotage damage is really kind of in place of that bleed damage here. So you can see we've hit into her quite a bit since the last pure light form, and she's only gained a couple charges. She's gaining 1 whenever she uses her special. We can't turn that ability off because it's an offensive ability. So we really have like 10 specials more or less to work with before she can possibly activate her pure light form again. Going to relic here to turn on the beeper debuff, and then right into the special 2. You can see so much red damage, 6k per hit, causing the beeper debuff to fail, and then causing her debuffs to fail. Just so much damage here. 11k crits all over the place here, plus the 6k red damage. So Black Cat just hitting so hard. I don't have a Mantis. I probably would use Mantis. She's undoubtedly the easier option for this fight. But if you have a Black Cat, even like a high-ranking 6-star, you're going to be able to get through this fight with minimal difficulty, as long as you kind of mimic what I did here. Alright, so that was my completion run. That is the right-hand side. Let's go ahead and jump onto the left-hand side now. Alright, so the left-hand path, in my estimation, is significantly more difficult than the right side because there are fewer tactic defenders, so you really have to bring like more hard counters to these fights. The fights that we are repeating, I'm going to speed up, of course, rather than talk through them again. So here we have a Venom. I couldn't fit Hulkling on the team for the left side, so we're going to do this with Titania. And what I did here was just restart the fight until he did not get an armor up at the start. And then what you're going to see me do here is try and be super aggressive with my heavy attacks. The heavy attacks from Titania are going to apply a stagger debuff. So whenever the Clintar buff resets, the stagger is going to eat that. And you have to have, again, a lot of staggers on him, because if he gets an armor up, then you're going to suffer the power burn and the power lock as well. And I think that actually does happen in this fight, and I kind of have to figure out how to recover from it. So right there, he gains the armor up. So now what I'm going to do is Striker. Once I trigger the Haymaker here, we're going to try and push him to the special 2 here. So we are immune to the power burn damage because we're indestructible, taking a little bit of it there. and then we get him to throw the special 2, so he eats his own armorette buff, and now we've kind of reset the fight here. And that allows us to combo right into the special 3, which is pretty much going to kill him as soon as we dash in here and use a heavy. So again, as long as you have a way of controlling those armorette buffs, you don't really need a hard counter to this particular fight. Alright, we have Kindred here again. I decided to go in with Titania. Again, rather than use Void. It took me like a day and a half to do this left-hand path completely itemless. I was very stubborn with it. I didn't want to use any items because I use enough items in real war. I didn't really want to use items in fake war as well. So did this fight a bunch of times with Void. Went in, just wanted to get it done a bit quicker, so I went in with Titania this time. Same strategy as before. Just make sure you keep a bar of power for the end when you get rooted. I mismanaged the power there because he steals some of it on that special 2, but I managed to special intercept him while rooted, and we end the fight there. Alright, next up we have a very tricky Longshot. He was on this node all the time in every war during these 2 seasons. We would usually send like a Cassie Lang to this fight, I think. You really want a buff immune for this fight, because if you gain buffs, Longshot's increased ability accuracy is going to cause him to go unstoppable from the tactic pretty much all the time. So you really, really want a buff immune character for this fight. And Titania really makes this look easy. So he's going to be unblockable pretty much the entire fight from Masochism over time. You need to make sure that you know how to properly dex and punish his special 1 by dashing in there. Stay aggressive, keep pushing him over a bar of power. You don't have to worry about Mystic Dispersion. You don't really have to worry about the healing because we're counteracting a lot of it with Despair. And then you want to throw your special 3 while that regen buff is active. That's how you know that Masochism is on cooldown and your buffs won't get eaten by it. And 1 heavy in the corner finishes that fight off. So again, this is why Titania was banned for 2 seasons straight. Alright, moving on, we have a Bishop here on 33. The node here is really designed to counteract iDoom, which was a popular Bishop counter back before like Iron Man was buffed. So in this fight, we're just going to be using Titania. I think I take a special 2 or 2 to the face here, but as long as you push him away from the special 1, you're going to be just fine. And even if you get those incinerates on you, you won't take any damage from them because you have plenty of debuffs on Bishop himself. So right there, he throws special 1 into my block. So I'm just kind of staying aggressive. Of course, I get myself parried there. That sucks. I think this is my last Titania fight on this path. So again, as long as we get through it here, I don't really care how much damage I take. Push him back to the special 2. You can see, like, even taking that special 1, we didn't really lose that much health, and we were able to heal up some of that with willpower. Toss the special 3, and that is all she wrote. 1 heavy finishes the fight there. Alright, moving on. This fight, very, very difficult. We're going to pop some Odin pre-fights on here for Kushala. Kushala I had just pulled like moments before I did this path, and she makes this look very, very easy. So the idea here is that every time GORR gains a buff, he gains this power efficiency charge, and if he gains 6 of those, he gains a power efficiency passive, which causes his specials to consume much less power than they normally would. So the danger in this fight here is you're going to get easily backed up because he's constantly going to be spamming specials. Eventually you're going to be taking hits on the block, and if you don't have immunity to his debuffs, you're just going to die pretty much instantly. So during the season, I took this fight a few times with Sandman. Sandman a little bit more difficult here because you can't start with a bar of power like you can in war, but Kushala here is just so easy. I'm not even playing her like optimally. Like you can see, I don't have any of my blessings active because I don't really want to parry him. So you just keep spamming your special attacks, and this is a sub 1 minute fight with Kushala. Very, very easy. This was the fight that got me stuck the most here. This is a Hazard Shift ZEMO. I tried using Onslaught on this fight. He's like a hard counter to this fight. But baiting out specials from ZEMO with an XL champ I found to be very difficult and very inconsistent. And what would end up happening is ZEMO would just hold on to that special 1, and then he would one-shot me into my block with like 15 prowess on a special 2. So Kushala makes this much easier. So we are Incinerate immune, so we are triggering some Furies every time we trigger that immunity. And then we have the shock resistance from Odin, so we don't have to worry about that. And if we're just spamming special attacks, we can take care of the fury buffs that ZEMO gets from when we trigger that immunity. So I'm really just spamming whatever special I have at the moment, just to deal as much damage as possible. And you can see with a smaller type character like Kushala, he is much more willing to throw his specials. This is way easier than all of the attempts that I had with Onslaught. Way faster too, even though I've sped the fight up. And again, I'm not really playing Kushala optimally here. I didn't want to block him with those Furies. I didn't really want to risk taking a special on the block either. So I'm being very careful here, just to bait out all these special ones. If we get a blessing up from intercepting, that's fine. Otherwise, we're going to rely on those Incinerates and the Soul Barb really to do him in here. So yeah, don't want to parry. The Dorians are probably going to cause your parries to fail anyways. So getting a heavy off here, could probably heavy counter the special one if you're feeling real sassy. I was really feeling very conservative on this fight, so I knew Kushala could take this fight as long as I didn't make a critical mistake. Hit into the block here, he throws one more special, and another hit does him in. Kushala's just so good. Alright, these next two fights are kind of repeats, so we'll speed right through them here. We have another Mysterio on Stunning Reflection with Polka Dot Power. One thing I didn't mention in the previous run is that Void's direct damage does not count for Polka Dot Power because they aren't actually damaging debuffs. He is causing debuffs to be damaging. So we don't have access to any of our specials in this fight. So again, I want to call out the importance of heavy countering his special 1. Since you can't ramp Void up quickly with his special 1 in this fight, you need access to as many debuffs as possible in order to give yourself the most amount of damage. Another thing you can do in this fight with Void, and I would do during the season, is I would turn on the Resonate Mastery for this fight. And again, that's just to get access to an additional unique debuff, which equals additional damage for Void here. So if you want the fight to go a little bit faster, you can do that. Not really sure why I'm choosing to block the special 1 in this fight here. You can safely dex it as long as you keep heavy countering and get that slow debuff up. It's really causing like a lot of chip damage here as I'm kind of watching this back for the first time. But we'll get through it either way. Down he goes. And then last but not least, we have one more go at this Photon boss with Black Cat. Heavy counter her heavy twice at the start of the fight. That's going to build up your combo to above 15, giving you that 60% ability accuracy reduction, which is going to prevent the debuffs from sticking when you hit into her, and thus prevent her charges and pure light form. One thing you'll see me do a bit better of a job of in this fight is making sure that I knock her down when I know that a knockdown is going to trigger pure light form, meaning she's above 10 of those charges. I wait to knock her down until I know that I'm not going to be giving her a bar of power here. So, you know, it's always safe to bait out specials from her when she's below 10, or not in pure light form, I should say, not just below 10. So when I see that I've pushed her above 10 charges, which is right here in this special one, I'm going to wait, push her, and not knock her down until I know that the knockdown is going to not give her enough power. So right here, we're baiting out this special one. She's at 11. So what I'm going to do here is let her dump her power, and then I'm going to special intercept with the special 2. That's going to give me the sabotage debuff and the knockdown. It's going to trigger pure light form, but she will not have a bar of power, and thus will not be able to do one of those unblockable, undexable special attacks here. So I kind of risk it for the biscuit there anyways, because I know that the fight is kind of almost over. Kind of holding block here, and then pure light form has ended. We can safely bait out that special. Not really sure why I didn't strike her there into the special 2, but basic combos end up finishing the fight. So, and that is exploration on the Alliance War Showcase. I hope this was helpful for you. Again, there are a lot of really good tactic options out there, so if you have Titania or Hulk or Void or Spider-Gwen, any of those options are going to do really well for you. So if this helped you out, let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and as always, thank you very much for watching. See you again next time.